Hi there. Okay, I decided I'm going to do some tutorials on getting started with Lightroom Classic, and we're going to work through from getting Lightroom set up all the way through to getting your images in there and actually working with Lightroom. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the preferences, because you have two sets of preferences. One set for your catalogue that you're going to work with, and the other set is for the Lightroom Classic software itself. But this is specific to each catalogue, so each time you set up a new catalogue within Lightroom Classic, then you can have a different set of preferences for each catalogue. We'll discuss catalogues in a future video, but for now I've opened a new catalogue. There's no images in, as you can see up here in the left hand side. It contains no images, but we still need to go into the preferences and take a look and see how it's set up. This you can do after you've actually imported images, so don't worry if you've already got images in there, then you can still go and alter the preferences. So in a Mac, I believe you go into Lightroom, into preferences. If you're on a PC, you're in the library module, you go to edit and down to preferences and click on preferences. This will open a dialog box. If we look along the top, we have different tabs, and the first tab, it's opened in presets, but the first tab is the general tab. So we're going to click on here, and I'll just quickly run through. Obviously you choose your language. The splash screen is the screen that pops up at the very beginning with the Lightroom image on, and when Lightroom does an update, a big update, it changes the image on the front, so you'll always know that you're in the current process. So I'll leave that on. Automatically check for updates. When you load Lightroom up onto the screen, if this box is checked, it will just pop up a little box saying there is Lightroom updates ready for download. So then you can go onto your Adobe app and download your updates. If you don't want to get reminded of updates, uncheck this box, but it's helpful to have it there. When you click on your icon to load Lightroom, whichever catalogue is chosen in this box here is the catalogue it will load up. So if we click on this little arrow, and we'll have lots of these little arrows for drop down boxes, so you can see I have a few different catalogues going for different reasons. This 2017 one is my working catalogue. This catalogue that I'm using here today, if we look up here, is called brand new training catalogue. So when I usually load into Lightroom, I wanted to open my working catalogue, so I have this one chosen. You can choose to load the most recent catalogue, and if you're only using the default catalogue, then if you have load most recent catalogue selected, it will take you back into that catalogue each time. So I'm going to leave this one checked. Show import dialog box when a memory card is detected. So if you have Lightroom running and you plug your camera in, or you plug a memory card into your computer, it will automatically load the import dialog box. So you can decide whether to do that or go down to the import and click the button yourself. It's up to you. Select the current or previous import collection during import, so you can leave that one checked. Ignore camera generated folder names when using folders. If you have separate folder names within your camera and it writes images into separate folders, then you can choose to untick this box, or you can leave it ticked to tell Lightroom to ignore the folders and just import all of the images off that memory card. Treat JPEG files next to RAW files as separate photographs. This is important. If you're a photographer who shoots RAW and JPEG onto the same card, if you want to see those side by side in the Lightroom catalogue, then you must have this box ticked. If you don't, it will bring the images off of the memory card or out of the camera and put them onto your PC wherever you tell it to put them in the import dialog box, but it won't show you the JPEGs in the Lightroom catalogue. It will only show you the raw files. So if you want to see them side by side, you need to have that box ticked, and I think by default it's not ticked. Replace the embedded previews with standard previews during idle time. Yes, you can leave that box ticked, it won't make much difference. If we come down here, these are just noises that you can have Lightroom make when it finishes doing an import, or it finishes doing an export, or if you're tethered shooting and you stop tethered shooting. I tend to like this because if I go off and make a cup of coffee, I like to be able to hear in the background that it's chosen to make a noise. So I would choose to have these on. If they annoy you, you can come back in later and turn them off. So if we come on to the presets, this is quite an advanced feature where you can choose to add specific presets to a specific camera. So if you have different cameras, you can add certain presets to those cameras on import without actually having to do anything. So we'll come back to that at a later date when we cover imports. So for now, I'm just going to leave this as is. Show partially compatible developed presets. Yes, I'm going to have that ticked. Store presets with this catalogue. That is important. Now, if you have your catalogue on a PC, all your photographs are on the PC, you only use that one PC, then Lightroom will store the presets in a presets folder. But if you have your catalogue on an external hard drive and you have your photographs on an external hard drive, and you take that hard drive and plug it into another PC that has Lightroom software on it, then you want to tick the box in store presets with this catalogue so that it's stored in the folder where your catalogue is on your external hard drive. Because if you make presets and you don't have this box ticked, the presets will be stored on this PC and not on the external hard drive with your catalogue. So that's an important box to have checked. These are just how you restore all the Lightroom defaults here. So if you ever mess things up and you want to come back in and restore, this is where you restore from. Now if we go to external handling, this section here at the top is how Lightroom handles an image that you're going to take from Lightroom into Photoshop and then bring back into Lightroom. So you have the drop down boxes for choices. You can take it in as a TIFF or as a PSD. I'll choose PSD. Colour space, I usually work in Adobe RGB because not many monitors can handle ProPhoto RGB, so the choice is to work in ProPhoto or in Adobe RGB. You can see in that list you have sRGB, which is what you use for web and for a lot of printers if you send out to a printer, but you convert the images to sRGB on export, so that will be dealt with in a later video. So for this purpose we're going to leave it in Adobe RGB. The resolution, I do believe for Epson printers you can have a resolution of 360. For all other printers your print resolution would be at 300. So some people recommend 240, 300 is what I use, so I'll have that in there. If I then want to take this into an external editor, and I do have some plugins which work with Lightroom, so I drop onto the drop down box here, then I can choose the software, and I can go down and make the same selections here, and I would leave them in 16-bit on both of them and change this to 300. Stack with the original is important because you want, when Photoshop brings the image back into Lightroom, you want to be able to see it side by side with the original raw file. If you don't, it'll stick it at the end of the list of photographs that you've got open. So we want to stack it with the original. And down here is where you can change your file name and priority. So if we select the drop down box, you can choose how you want the file name to appear. Sorry, so if I had silver effects up here, I would have silver effects down here. The next section is file handling. If you convert to DNG, and we'll discuss the use of DNGs when we come to doing the import dialog box, this is where the DNG size is depicted. When you use keywords, you need a keyword separator, and the keyword separator here I like to use is the comma. So you can use the comma or the /. I like to use the comma, so I have this box ticked. I ignore this down here because unless you are into code and different things with your computer, you can completely ignore that and leave it as is. If we come on to the interface here, this is quite self-explanatory, so you can go in here and you can change the colour of the background and the cover of the inlay. The panel end marks are these, just this little thing here, so by default you would have a small flourish in there. If you have I have this little sketch in there. If you have a company logo or something, for example, you can bring that in and have that sat in there, and it's all just how Lightroom appears on the screen. These can all be altered from within Lightroom itself by right clicking in the area and changing the colours. If you like automatic text to automatic complete keywords as you're typing them in, then you have this box checked. All of these boxes can be checked and won't really make much of a difference unless things like show stack counts. If you have images stacked, and we'll be dealing with that in a later video, it will tell you how many, with the little number, how many images are in that stack, and they're handy things to have going. The big one I have ticked here is zoom the clicked point to the centre. So if you're looking at a portrait and you want to zoom in at 100% on somebody's eye and you click on the eye, if this box isn't ticked, then the image will just zoom into the centre and you have to scroll around the image till you get to the person's eye. Where if you click on the eye, it will zoom the eye into the centre of the photograph, and that's where you want it to be. The next important things are in performance here. If you have a graphics processor that is compatible with Lightroom, Lightroom will recognise that and it will give you the choice here to use a graphics processor. If you get the choice to use the graphics processor and you use it and you find it's really slowing Lightroom down, then you can come back in and turn it off again. Anybody who knows anything about computers will know a little bit more about that, but I am not a technical person, so I'll not say an awful lot on that. The cache size down here is normally set quite low by standard in Lightroom, and I don't know why. If you have a powerful enough computer, you can push this, you could probably push this a lot higher. I'm running on quite an old computer, but still can push this up to 40. If you find you push it high and it's slowing the computer down, you can come back in and change it until you get to the stage where your computer can work within Lightroom quite fluently. Video cache size I don't use. I've never altered that. Enable hover previews of presets to show in the loop view. So before Lightroom brought this in, if you wanted to see what a preset looked like on that particular image, you'd have to click the preset and put it onto the image to see. Now if you just hover over the presets, it will show you in the loop view, the full size image, what that preset is going to look like. So I have that enabled. Use smart previews instead of original images. This is handy for two things. If you're running Lightroom on quite an old PC, or if you have a modern camera with large files, that can slow down the editing process in Lightroom. So you can tell Lightroom when you've imported and you create smart previews, you can tell Lightroom to edit the smart previews and use the smart previews instead of the original image, which is I do to try and speed my workflow up a little bit. The smart previews aren't as good clarity wise as the original raw image, but once it renders that work down onto the raw file, which it will do when you stop editing, it will be absolutely fine. The other time to use smart previews is if you have all your images on your internal hard drive on the computer and you want to take your catalogue, which is on an external hard drive, and you want to take that catalogue and work on a laptop, or you want to take it away on holiday or on a photography trip, then you can go away and you can still edit on those smart previews whilst the original images are on your computer at home. And when you can bring that catalogue back on the external hard drive, plug it in and boot up Lightroom, it will write all those changes into the original raw files. So it's worth having a think about if you ever need to use that facility. That can be just left ticked. Lightroom sync, if you're going to be syncing between, if you have Lightroom, you can have Lightroom CC, you can have Lightroom Classic on your desktop, you can have Lightroom on your mobile or on your iPad, and if you're going to sync them, this is where the settings are sorted out in there. So you can do that and specify the folder on your hard drive for the synced images, and if you want to put them in date format within that folder, you check this box and tell it how you want it to do. Next box is display. I only have one display, but if you use multiple displays, monitors for Lightroom, this is where you can have your secondary, choose which is going to be your secondary monitor in here. And if you have to connect to a network, and you would need to get in touch with your IT people and have the username and password of the network put in here. Most people won't have to do that. So if we come back onto the general tab, what we're going to do now is click OK, or we have to write, for these changes to be applied, you have to restart Lightroom Classic for it to save these changes. So if we just click OK to that, those changes won't be saved until we exit Lightroom and come back in and start it again. So I will exit at this point. I'll do the next tutorial will be about the catalogue specific settings, which are specific to the catalogue and not to the Lightroom software. So I'll do a follow-up tutorial on that in the next day or so. Okay, thank you for listening, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.